Mason Carter thought he'd lost everything the day his wife died. But standing chest deep in a violent rip current, fighting to keep both his screaming daughter and a drowning stranger above water while the Pacific tried to drag all three of them under, he realized he was wrong. He still had something left to lose. The stranger turned out to be Selena Vaughn, one of the most powerful CEOs in California, a woman who trusted no one and needed nothing from anyone. Except now she couldn't stop thinking about the broken lifeguard who'd saved her life without asking for anything in return. And when that viral rescue video hit 10 million views in 6 hours, their lives collided in ways neither of them saw coming. If you want to see how this impossible story unfolds, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The ocean didn't care about your problems. That was the first thing Mason Carter learned as a lifeguard. And it was the truth he clung to every single morning when he pulled on his red trunks and drove his beat-up Civic down to Pelican Point Beach. The water didn't care that he was 32 and already felt 60. It didn't care that his daughter had cried herself to sleep again last night, asking why mommy couldn't come back. It didn't care that his bank account was running on fumes or that his landlord had started leaving threatening notes taped to his apartment door. The ocean just kept moving, rolling in, pulling back, indifferent and eternal. Mason liked that about it. He sat in his lifeguard tower that Thursday afternoon, squinting against the glare bouncing off the waves. August in Southern California meant the beaches were packed. Tourists everywhere, most of them terrible swimmers who thought a couple YouTube videos made them experts. He'd already pulled 2 kids out of a riptide that morning and yelled at a drunk college kid who tried to surf during a red flag warning. His radio crackled. "Mason, you got eyes on the North Jetty?" Postriums. He lifted his binoculars. "Yeah, what am I looking for?" "Some yacht party. Rich idiots anchored too close to the rocks. Keep an eye on them." Mason scanned the water until he found it. A gleaming white yacht, probably 60 feet long, bobbing dangerously near the jetty where the currents got nasty. He could see people on the deck, champagne glasses catching the sunlight. Music thumped faintly across the water. "Copy that," he muttered. Beside him, on the narrow bench inside the tower, his daughter Lily sat with her legs tucked under her, coloring in a battered workbook. She was 7 years old, skinny as a bird, with her mother's dark curls and her father's serious gray eyes. "Daddy, how do you spell dolphin?" "Dolphin. Eyes." She frowned at her paper, erasing something with fierce concentration. Mason watched her for a moment, his chest tight. Lily had been 4 when Sarah died. 3 years. And sometimes Mason still woke up reaching for his wife in bed, forgetting she was gone. He turned back to the water. The yacht hadn't moved, but now he could see someone standing at the railing. A woman in a white dress, alone, staring out at the ocean like she was trying to read something in the waves. His radio crackled again. "Mason, you seen this?" "Seen what?" "That yacht. Currents shifting. They're drifting toward the jetty." Mason swore under his breath. He grabbed his binoculars again. The guy at the helm wasn't even watching. He was laughing with someone, drink in hand, completely oblivious, as the yacht began sliding sideways toward the rocks. Then the woman in this white dress did something Mason had seen 100 times before, always right before disaster. She climbed over the railing. "No," he breathed. "No, don't." She jumped. For a second, she seemed to hang in the air. Then the ocean swallowed her whole. Mason was already moving. He keyed his radio as he vaulted down from the tower. "We got a jumper off that yacht. Adult female. I'm going in." "Copy. Backup's rolling." "Lily," Mason barked. "Stay in the tower." "Do not move." Her eyes went wide. "Daddy, I mean it. Stay there." He didn't wait for an answer. He hit the sand running, his rescue buoy already in hand, his heart slamming against his ribs. The beach was crowded, people scattering as he sprinted toward the water, but he barely saw them. All he saw was the woman's head bobbing in the surf, and then disappearing under a wave. Mason crashed into the water. The cold hit him like a fist, but he didn't slow down. He dove under the first breaker and came up stroking hard, his eyes locked on the spot where she'd gone under. The current was worse than he'd thought. It grabbed at his legs, trying to yank him sideways toward the jetty. He kicked harder, his lungs already burning. Where was she? There, a flash of white, 10 yards ahead. He reached her just as she went under again. Her dress had tangled around her legs, and she was thrashing wildly, fighting the ocean like it was something she could beat with sheer willpower. "Stop fighting!" Mason yelled, grabbing her from behind. "Stop!" She twisted in his grip, her elbow slamming into his ribs. He grunted, but didn't let go. She was strong, stronger than most people he pulled out of the water, and terrified in a way that made her dangerous. "Let me go," she choked. "Not a chance." Mason hooked the rescue buoy under her arms and started kicking back toward shore. "Stop fighting me or we both drown." She went rigid for a second, and he thought maybe she'd finally listen. But then another wave hit them, and she panicked again, clawing at his arms. Mason's head went under, salt water filled his mouth, his nose. He surfaced coughing, still holding on to her, still kicking. The jetty loomed to his left, black rocks slick with algae. If the current dragged them into that, they were done. He kicked harder, his shoulders screamed, his lungs felt like they were full of broken glass. But he kept moving, stroke after stroke, until his feet finally touched sand. He dragged her into the shallows and collapsed onto his knees, gasping. The woman rolled onto her side, coughing up seawater, her white dress plastered to her skin. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mason heard it, a scream, high and thin, cutting through the roar of the surf. "Daddy!" He whipped around. Lily was running toward the water, her face pale with terror. She'd left the tower. She was heading straight for the waves, and another set was rolling in, bigger than the last. Mason's blood turned to ice. He lunged to his feet and sprinted toward her, his legs shaking with exhaustion. He reached her just as a wave broke over them both, knocking her off her feet. He scooped her up, holding her tight against his chest as the water tried to rip her away. She was sobbing, her small hands fisted in his shirt. "I thought you were gone," she gasped. "I'm here," Mason said, his voice rough. "I'm right here." He carried her back to dry sand and set her down, checking her over with shaking hands. She was soaked, but unharmed, just scared. Behind them, someone was shouting. Mason turned and saw a crowd gathering around the woman he'd pulled from the water. She was sitting up now, her dark hair hanging in wet ropes around her face, her expression unreadable. A man in an expensive suit pushed through the crowd and dropped to his knees beside her. "Miss Vaughn, are you hurt?" Miss Vaughn didn't answer. She was staring at Mason. Their eyes met across the sand and something passed between them, something Mason didn't have words for. Not gratitude, not fear, something sharper, more complicated. Then the paramedics arrived, and the moment shattered. Mason didn't stick around. He grabbed Lily and headed back to the lifeguard tower, ignoring the reporters already swarming the beach with cameras and microphones. Someone had filmed the whole thing. Of course. These days, someone always filmed everything. By the time his shift ended 2 hours later, his phone was blowing up. Text from his buddy Rick. "Dude, you're on the news." Text from his sister in Oregon. "Are you okay? Call me." Text from numbers he didn't recognize. "Is this the lifeguard from the video?" He turned his phone off and drove home in silence. Lily sat in the passenger seat, still wrapped in a towel, staring out the window. "Daddy?" she said quietly. "Yeah, kiddo?" "Who was that lady?" Mason's hands tightened on the wheel. "I don't know." But that was a lie. He'd recognized her the moment he saw her face on the beach. Everyone in California knew Selena Vaughn. She was on magazine covers, business podcasts, tech conference stages. The youngest woman to ever build a billion-dollar software company. The ice queen who fired executives over breakfast and crushed competitors without blinking. What the hell had she been doing jumping off a yacht in the middle of the afternoon? He didn't have an answer, and he told himself he didn't care. Their apartment was a cramped 2-bedroom in a building that smelled like mildew and burnt cooking oil. The elevator hadn't worked in months. Mason carried Lily up 3 flights of stairs and unlocked the door to find exactly what he'd left that morning. Dishes in the sink, laundry piled on the couch, bills stacked on the kitchen counter. "Go take a shower," he told Lily. "Then we'll order pizza. Can we get the one with the stuffed crust?" "Sure, Sick." She disappeared down the hall, and Mason sank onto the couch, rubbing his face with both hands. His whole body ached. His ribs throbbed where that woman, where Selena Vaughn, had elbowed him. He thought about Sarah, about how she used to tease him for bringing his work home, for staying up late worrying about every tourist who ignored the warning flags. You can't save everyone, she'd say, kissing his temple. You're not responsible for the whole ocean. But Sarah was gone, and Mason had learned the hard way that you couldn't save anyone, really. Not from cancer, not from drowning, not from the brutal, indifferent machinery of the world. He pulled out his phone and turned it back on. The video was everywhere. Someone had posted it to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The footage was shaky but clear. Mason fighting through the surf, dragging Selena Vaughn to shore, then running to save Lily from the waves. The caption read, "Hero lifeguard saves billionaire, CEO, and his own daughter in terrifying rescue." It had 10 million views. Mason felt sick. He scrolled through the comments. This guy is incredible. Single dad and a hero? Where can I find one of those? Did you see how he didn't even hesitate? Selena Vaughn, better give this man a reward. He turned the phone off again and threw it across the room. Gate. The next morning, there was a black SUV parked outside his building. Mason noticed it on his way to work. Tinted windows, California plates, expensive enough that it didn't belong in this neighborhood. He didn't think much of it until he came home that afternoon and found the same SUV still there. This time, the back door opened. A man stepped out, tall, black, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Mason's monthly rent. He had the build of someone who worked out seriously and the expression of someone who didn't smile much. "Mr. Carter?" he said. Mason stopped on the sidewalk, his keys in his hand. "Who's asking?" "My name is Julian Ross. I work for Selena Vaughn." Of course, Mason should have seen this coming. "Look," he said, "I don't want any reward or publicity or whatever. Trauma. Miss Vaughn would like to meet with you." "Why?" Julian's expression didn't change. "She'll explain in person, tonight, if you're available." "I'm not." "Tomorrow, then." "I work tomorrow." "We're aware of your schedule. Miss Vaughn is willing to work around it." Mason stared at him. There was something unsettling about Julian's calm, like he was a man who'd been hired specifically because nothing rattled him. "What if I say no?" Mason asked. "Then I'll be back the day after tomorrow." "Cha?" Nikki Otsa. They looked at each other for a long moment, then Mason sighed. "Fine. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. But I'm bringing my daughter." Julian nodded once. "A car will pick you up." He got back into the SUV and drove away, leaving Mason standing on the curb with a feeling in his gut like he'd just made a terrible mistake. Lily was thrilled. "We're going to meet the lady from the beach?" she asked, bouncing on the couch. "The one you saved?" "Yeah." "Is she nice?" Mason thought about the woman thrashing in his arms, fighting him even as he dragged her to safety. He thought about her eyes on the beach, cold and sharp and unreadable. "I don't know, kid." The car arrived exactly at 7. Not the SUV this time, but a sleek black sedan with leather seats and a driver who didn't speak. Lily pressed her nose to the window as they drove north along the coast, past the tourist beaches and into the hills where the houses had gates and the driveways curved out of sight. They stopped in front of a sprawling estate perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The house was all glass and steel, modern and cold, lit from within like a piece of expensive jewelry. Julian met them at the door. "Miss Vaughn is waiting on the terrace," he said. He led them through the house, past rooms filled with minimalist furniture and abstract art, and out onto a wide stone terrace that hung suspended over the edge of the cliff. Below, the Pacific crashed against the rocks in a white froth. Selena Vaughn stood at the railing, her back to them. She wore black slacks and a crisp white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail. When she turned, her face was calm and composed, nothing like the terrified woman Mason had pulled from the water. "Mr. Carter," she said. Her voice was low and precise, every word carefully measured. "Thank you for coming." "Didn't feel like I had much choice." Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "You didn't." She looked down at Lily, who was staring at her with wide, curious eyes. "And this must be your daughter." "Lily," Mason said. "Say hello." "Hi," Lily whispered. Selena crouched down, moving with the kind of deliberate grace that came from years of controlling every inch of her body language. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. You were very brave yesterday. Lily blinked. You were the one who fell in the water. I was. Why did you do that? Selena's expression flickered. Just for a second, something raw and unguarded crossed her face. Then it was gone. That's a complicated question, she said. She straightened and gestured to a table set with food, grilled fish, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. Please, sit. You must be hungry. Mason didn't move. Why are we here? Selena looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time he saw something beyond the cold control, something tired, something lonely. Because, she said quietly, I owe you my life, and I don't know what to do with that. Mang. They ate in near silence. Lily devoured her food with the enthusiasm of a 7-year-old who'd been promised dessert. Mason picked at his plate, his eyes on Selena. She barely touched her meal. She just sat there, watching the ocean, her fingers wrapped around a glass of wine she didn't drink. Finally, she spoke. I didn't jump, she said. Mason frowned. What? From the yacht. I didn't jump. I fell. She set the glass down. There was a railing. It was wet. I slipped. Okay, oshiso. The media is saying I jumped, that I was trying to... She trailed off, her jaw tight. It doesn't matter what they're saying. I want you to know the truth. Why do you care what I think? Her eyes met his, and he saw it again, that flash of something unguarded. Because you risked your life for me, she said, and you didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You just did it. Mason leaned back in his chair. That's my job. No. Your job is to watch the beach. You weren't on duty when you went after your daughter. He didn't answer. Selena looked at Lily, who was swinging her legs under the table, completely oblivious to the tension in the air. You have a beautiful family, Mr. Carter. It's just the two of us. Your wife? Dead 3 years ago. The word hung in the air like a stone. Selena's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Selena stood, walking to the edge of the terrace. The wind tugged at her hair, and she looked small suddenly, fragile in a way that didn't match the steel in her voice. I want to hire you, she said. Mason blinked. What? I own this property. 5 acres, half a mile of private beach. I'm here 3 days a week, sometimes more. I need someone who understands the ocean, someone who can make sure it's safe. You need a lifeguard, I need a consultant, ocean safety, security, whatever you want to call it. She turned to face him. I'll pay you 3 times what you're making now. Mason's mouth went dry. 3 times his salary would mean he could pay rent without lying awake at night doing math in his head. It would mean Lily could have new shoes, new clothes, maybe even a birthday party this year. But he wasn't an idiot. People like Selena Vaughn didn't offer jobs like this without strings attached. Why me? He asked. Because you're the only person in the last 10 years who looked at me and didn't see dollar signs. You don't know that. Yes, she said quietly. I do. Mason glanced at Lily, who was watching them both with her too serious eyes. Then he looked back at Selena, at the guarded loneliness in her face, and felt something twist in his chest. He should say no. He should walk away right now, take Lily home, and forget this ever happened. But 3 times his salary, new shoes, rent paid on time, maybe even a little left over. I'll think about it, he said. Selena nodded. That's all I ask. Anshik. The video went viral again that night. Not the rescue this time, a new one. Someone had filmed Mason and Lily getting into Selena Vaughn's car. The internet went insane. Is the lifeguard dating Selena Vaughn? Single dad meets billionaire CEO. Modern fairy tale? Selena Vaughn seen with mystery man and his daughter Mason deleted Twitter. Then Instagram. Then turned his phone off completely. But he couldn't delete the voice in his head. The one that sounded like Sarah, whispering that he was making a mistake. He stood in Lily's doorway that night, watching her sleep. She looked so small in her bed, clutching her worn, stuffed rabbit. So fragile. Mason had spent 3 years building a wall around the two of them. A small life, a safe life, where nothing unexpected could hurt them. And now Selena Vaughn was offering to tear that wall down. He thought about her face on the terrace, the way she'd looked at the ocean like it was something she wanted to understand but never could. He thought about the desperation in her voice when she'd said, "You didn't see dollar signs. Maybe that was true. Or maybe she was just good at making people believe what she wanted them to believe." Either way, Mason had a choice to make. And the ocean, indifferent as always, kept rolling in. Mason spent the next 3 days pretending the offer didn't exist. He showed up at the beach every morning at 6, climbed into his tower, and watched the water like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The other lifeguards kept giving him looks, some jealous, some curious, all of them waiting for him to explain what the hell was going on with Selena Vaughn. He didn't have an explanation, not one that made sense anyway. Rick cornered him on Friday during lunch break. Rick was 52, sunburned to leather, and had been working Pelican Point since before Mason was born. He dropped onto the bench beside Mason's tower with a grunt. "So," Rick said, unwrapping a sandwich that smelled like old tuna, "you gonna tell me what happened? Or do I gotta read about it in the tabloids?" "Nothing happened." "Bullshit. I saw the video. You and your kid getting into her car." "She wanted to say thank you. That's it." Rick chewed slowly, squinting at the horizon. "You know what people are saying, right? I don't care what people are saying. They're saying she's going to hire you, some private security thing." Mason's jaw tightened. "Where'd you hear that?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. It's a small town, man. Word gets around." Rick balled up his sandwich wrapper and tossed it into a nearby trash can. "You thinking about taking it?" "I don't know." "What's the pay?" Mason didn't answer. Rick whistled low. "That good, huh?" "It's complicated. Money's never complicated. You either need it or you don't." Mason thought about the eviction notice he'd found taped to his door yesterday morning. 3 months behind on rent. The landlord was done being patient. "I need it," he admitted quietly. Rick nodded. "Then take the job. Stop overthinking it. What if it's a mistake? What if it's not?" Rick stood, brushing crumbs off his shorts. "Look, I knew Sarah. She was good people. But she's been gone 3 years, Mason. At some point, you gotta stop living like you died with her." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Mason opened his mouth to argue, but Rick was already walking away, leaving him alone with the ocean and the truth he didn't want to face. That night, after Lily went to bed, Mason pulled out his phone and stared at the number Julian Ross had given him. His thumb hovered over the screen for a full minute before he finally pressed call. Julian answered on the second ring. "Mr. Carter." "I'll take the job," Mason said, "but I have conditions." "I'm listening." "I keep my shifts at the beach 2 days a week. I bring Lily with me when I need to. And if this turns into some kind of publicity stunt, I'm out. No questions, no notice." There was a pause, then Julian said, "I'll relay your terms to Miss Vaughn. When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll send a car." Mason hung up and sat in the dark, wondering if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the worst. The car arrived at 8:45. Lily pressed her face against the window the entire drive, pointing out every expensive house they passed. Mason barely noticed. His stomach was twisted in knots, and his mind kept circling back to the same question. What the hell was he doing? The estate looked different in daylight, less like a piece of jewelry and more like a fortress. High walls, security cameras, a gate that required a code to open. The kind of place that screamed "keep out" in every architectural choice. Julian met them at the front entrance. He looked exactly the same as before. Suit, neutral expression, the aura of a man who'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. "Miss Vaughn is down at the beach," he said. "Follow me." He led them through the house and out the back, where a stone staircase carved into the cliff descended toward the water. The stairs were steep and uneven, and Mason had to hold Lily's hand to keep her from stumbling. At the bottom, the beach opened up, a crescent of white sand tucked between 2 rocky outcroppings, completely hidden from the road above. The water was calmer here, protected from the worst of the surf. Selena stood at the water's edge, barefoot, her slacks rolled up to her knees. She wasn't looking at the ocean. She was looking at a tablet in her hands, her face tight with concentration. Julian cleared his throat. "Miss Vaughn, yes." She glanced up, and her expression shifted, softened, just slightly. "Mr. Carter, you came." "I said I would." People say a lot of things. She turned off the tablet and set it on a nearby rock. Did Julian explain the terms? He said you'd explain them. Selena walked toward them, and Mason noticed she moved differently here than she had on the terrace. Less controlled. More real. I need someone who can assess this property for safety, she said. The beach, the water, the cliffs. I host events here sometimes. Investors, board members, clients. I can't afford for someone to get hurt because I didn't think about the tides or the rocks or whatever else I'm too ignorant to notice. You want me to be a glorified babysitter? Her eyes flashed. I want you to do what you do best. Keep people from drowning. So, Mason looked around the beach. It was beautiful, isolated, and deceptively dangerous. The rocks on either side created channels where riptides could form. The cliff was unstable in places, chunks of sandstone crumbling near the edge. You can't swim here, he said. Selena blinked. What? Not safely. Those channels funnel water straight out to sea. Someone gets caught in one of those, they're gone before anyone notices. So what do I do? Put up signs. Rope off the dangerous areas. Maybe install a ladder or two on the rocks so people have a way to climb out if they get pulled in. She nodded slowly, absorbing the information. What else? Mason spent the next hour walking the property with her, pointing out hazards she'd never considered. Loose stones on the stairs, sharp barnacles on the jetty. A section of cliff that looked stable but was ready to collapse with the next big storm. Lily trailed behind them, collecting shells and sea glass, humming to herself. Selena asked questions, good questions, specific ones that made it clear she was actually listening. And somewhere in the middle of explaining tidal patterns, Mason realized he was enjoying himself. For the first time in years, he was using the knowledge he'd built over a decade of watching the ocean, and someone was actually paying attention. When they finished, Selena led them back to the house. Inside, she poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the kitchen counter, studying Mason with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You're good at this, she said. It's my job. It's more than that. You see things other people miss. Mason shrugged. You spend enough time staring at the water, you learn what to look for. Is that what you do, stare at the water? Pretty much. She smiled, a real smile this time, small and fleeting. Sounds boring. It is. Then why do you do it? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing he didn't have a good answer. I don't know, he said finally. I guess because it's the only thing that makes sense anymore. Selena's smile faded. She looked down at her glass, swirling the water like it was wine. I understand that. Before Mason could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway, her hands full of shells. Can I show you what I found? She asked Selena. Selena hesitated, and for a second Mason thought she'd say no. But then she nodded and crouched down, letting Lily dump the shells onto the counter. This one's my favorite, Lily said, holding up a small spiral shell, pale pink and perfect. It looks like a princess crown. It does, Selena agreed. Do you like the ocean? Selena glanced at Mason, something unreadable in her expression. I don't know it very well. Daddy can teach you. He knows everything about the ocean. I doubt that. He does. He even knows why the water tastes salty. Selena raised an eyebrow. Why does it taste salty? Lily looked at Mason expectantly. He sighed. Minerals? He said. Mostly sodium chloride. Erosion washes them into the ocean over millions of years. See? Lily said triumphantly. I told you. Selena laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. It changed her whole face, made her look younger, less guarded. Mason felt something twist in his chest. Over the next 2 weeks, Mason fell into a routine he hadn't expected. Mondays and Wednesdays at the beach, Tuesdays and Thursdays at Selena's estate, Fridays split between both. Lily came with him everywhere, her backpack stuffed with coloring books and snacks. Selena was there most days, working from the house, occasionally wandering down to the beach to check on whatever project Mason was managing. She'd hired a contractor to install the safety measures he'd recommended. Warning signs, ropes, ladders. Mason supervised the work, making sure everything was done right. He also started noticing things about Selena, small things, like how she always drank her coffee black, no sugar, and how she held the cup with both hands like she was trying to warm herself even on hot days. Like how she talked on the phone and clipped cold sentences, but her voice softened when she spoke to Lily. Like how she never sat with her back to a door. One Thursday afternoon, Mason found her on the terrace, staring at her laptop with an expression that could have melted steel. She didn't notice him approach until he was standing right beside her. "Problem?" he asked. She slammed the laptop shut. "Just work. You look like you're about to throw that thing off the cliff." "I'm considering it." Mason leaned against the railing. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Okay." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Selena sighed. "My CFO is stealing from me," she said. Mason turned to look at her. "What?" "Not directly. He's too smart for that. But he's been routing funds through shell companies, skimming a percentage here and there, small enough that it doesn't trigger alarms, but over the last 2 years." She shook her head. "It's in the millions. Can you prove it?" "Not yet, but I will." "What happens when you do?" Her smile was razor sharp. "I destroy him." Well, there was something chilling about the way she said it. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. "Does that bother you?" she asked, watching him. Mason thought about it. "No. If he's stealing from you, he deserves whatever he gets. Most people would tell me to be reasonable, to handle it quietly. I'm not most people." Selena's expression shifted, something almost like approval flickering across her face. "No, you're not." That night, Mason couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Selena's smile and the casual way she'd talked about destroying someone's career. It should have scared him. Maybe it did. A little. But it also made him wonder what kind of person she'd had to become to survive in her world. The answer came sooner than he expected. On Friday, Mason arrived at the estate to find Selena's driveway packed with cars. Expensive ones. Teslas, Mercedes, a Porsche that probably cost more than his annual salary. Inside, the house was full of people in suits, all of them talking in low, urgent voices. Julian intercepted Mason at the door. "Emergency board meeting. Miss Vaughn asked that you wait on the terrace." "What happened?" "The CFO situation escalated." Mason found a spot on the terrace and tried to stay out of the way. Lily sat beside him, drawing in her notebook, oblivious to the tension radiating from inside the house. Through the glass doors, Mason could see Selena standing at the head of a long table, her arms crossed, her face a mask of ice. She was speaking. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see the effect. The people around the table looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. One man stood up, shouting. Selena didn't flinch. She said something short and sharp, and the man sat back down, his face red. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it finally ended, the board members filed out in silence, their expressions ranging from shell-shocked to furious. Mason watched them go, trying to piece together what had happened. Selena appeared on the terrace a few minutes later. She looked exhausted, her shoulders sagging in a way he'd never seen before. "You're still here," she said. "Julian said to wait." She sank into a chair and closed her eyes. "I fired him. David, my CFO, in front of the entire board. Did they believe you? I had evidence. Bank statements, emails, everything. They didn't have a choice." She opened her eyes and looked at Mason. "Half of them think I'm paranoid. The other half think I'm ruthless." "What do you think?" "I think I just lost the only person I trusted in that company." Mason frowned. "I thought he was stealing from you." "He was. But he was also the best CFO I've ever had. And before he started skimming, he was my friend." Her voice cracked on the last word. "We built this company together, and he betrayed me." She pressed her hands to her face, and for a terrible moment, Mason thought she might cry. But when she lowered her hands, her eyes were dry. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Why? You didn't do anything." "Hey." "I know. But you look like you could use someone to say it." Selena stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You're strange, Mr. Carter." "I get that a lot." She stood and walked to the railing, looking out at the ocean. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you say yes to this job?" Mason considered lying, but something about the defeat in her posture made him tell the truth. Because I was 3 months behind on rent and my daughter needed new shoes. Selena turned, surprise flickering across her face. That's it? That's it. Not because you wanted to help me, or because you were curious about my world. No offense, but I don't care about your world. I care about paying my bills. She studied him, and slowly, something like respect settled into her expression. Thank you. For what? For being honest. Everyone else just tells me what they think I want to hear. Mason shrugged. I'm not good at lying. I noticed. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lily appeared, tugging on Mason's sleeve. Daddy, I'm hungry. Selena glanced at her watch. It's almost 6. Have you eaten? Not yet. Stay for dinner. I'll have the chef make something. Mason hesitated. You don't have to. I know, but I'd like the company. So they stayed. The chef, a quiet woman named Rosa, made pasta from scratch, and they ate on the terrace as the sun set over the ocean. Lily chattered the entire time, telling Selena about her school and her friends and the tooth she'd lost last week. Selena listened with a focus that surprised Mason. She asked questions, remembered details, smiled at Lily's rambling stories in a way that seemed almost wistful. After dinner, Lily fell asleep on the couch inside, curled up under a blanket Rosa had brought. Mason carried her out to the car, but Selena stopped him at the door. Mason, she said, and it was the first time she'd used his first name. Thank you for staying. It was just dinner. No, it was more than that. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and carried Lily to the car. On the drive home, he thought about the look on Selena's face when she'd watched Lily fall asleep. Like she was seeing something she'd lost a long time ago, or maybe something she'd never had. The following Tuesday, Mason arrived at the estate to find Selena already on the beach. She was wearing jeans and a loose white shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different, softer, more relaxed. I want you to teach me, she said when he reached her. Teach you what? She. About the ocean. You said I don't know it well. I want to change that. Mason raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I own half a mile of coastline and I don't understand the thing I'm looking at every day. It bothers me. So he taught her. He showed her how to read the water, where the riptides formed, showed how to spot sandbars, what the foam patterns meant. He taught her about tides and moon phases, about the difference between a shore break and a beach break. Selena absorbed it all with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She asked questions, took notes on her phone, made him repeat things until she understood. You're a quick study, Mason said. I have to be. My company moves fast. If I don't keep up, I get left behind. Is that why you work so much? She glanced at him. What do you mean? You're always on your phone, always in meetings. Even when you're here, you're not really here. Selena's jaw tightened. I built my company from nothing. A dorm room startup that everyone said would fail. Now it's worth billions, and there are 1,000 people who want to take it from me. If I stop working, even for a second, I lose everything. That sounds exhausting. It is. So why do you do it? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because it's the only thing I have. Mason looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the expensive clothes and the guarded expression to the loneliness underneath. That's not true, he said. Isn't it? I have no family, no real friends. The people around me only care about what I can do for them. She kicked at the sand. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone? Mason thought about the last 3 years. The empty apartment, the quiet dinners, the nights he'd lain awake wondering if he'd ever feel whole again. Yes, he said. I do. Selena met his eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition. Your wife, she said. What was she like? Sarah? Mason smiled despite himself. She was. Loud. Always laughing. Always moving. She made everything feel brighter just by being in the room. You loved her. Still do. Does it get easier, the missing her? No. You just get better at carrying it. Selena nodded slowly. I've never had that. Someone worth missing. Not once? There was someone. a long time ago, before the company took off. She looked out at the water. He said he loved me. Turned out he just loved the idea of what I could become. When I actually became it, he couldn't handle it. He was an idiot. She laughed, surprised. Maybe, or maybe I'm just too much for most people. Oh, you're not too much. You're just honest about what you want. And what do I want? Mason thought about it. Control, safety, a world that makes sense. Selena turned to him, her expression unreadable. You're right. But those things are lonely. They don't have to be. Don't they? Before Mason could answer, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out and saw a text from Rick. Where are you? We got a situation at the beach. I have to go, Mason said. Is everything okay? Oh. I don't know yet. He called Lily in from where she was playing near the water and started toward the stairs. But Selena caught his arm. Mason, thank you for listening. He nodded. Anytime. The situation at the beach turned out to be a false alarm, a tourist who'd panicked in shallow water. But by the time Mason got home that night, he couldn't stop thinking about Selena's words. I've never had someone worth missing. It stayed with him through dinner, through Lily's bedtime routine, through the hours he spent lying awake in the dark. He wondered what it would be like to live that way, to have everything and nothing at the same time. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could help her understand that she didn't have to. The shift happened gradually, like the tide coming in. One day, Mason was just an employee showing up to check safety equipment and mark hazard zones, and the next he was staying for lunch, then dinner, then spending entire afternoons on the terrace while Selena worked and Lily played in the sand below. He told himself it was just the job expanding, the natural result of Selena asking more questions and him having answers she needed. But that was a lie, and he knew it. The truth was messier. The truth was that Selena had started looking at him differently, not like hired help, but like someone whose opinion actually mattered. And Mason, despite every instinct screaming at him to keep his distance, found himself looking back. It scared the hell out of him. 3 weeks after he'd started working for her, Selena invited him to stay after hours. Not for dinner, not for anything specific. She just said, "Don't leave yet." And Mason found himself saying, "Okay," before his brain caught up with his mouth. They sat on the terrace with glasses of wine neither of them touched while Lily napped inside on the couch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that looked almost fake. "Tell me something true," Selena said suddenly. Mason frowned. "What?" "About yourself. Something you don't tell people." "Why?" "Because everyone I know lies to me, and I'm tired of it." Mason turned that over in his head. Then he said, "I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid. Spent every summer at the library reading books about whales and dolphins. Even got accepted to UC Santa Cruz." "What happened?" "Sarah got pregnant senior year. We got married. I dropped out. Got certified as a lifeguard instead." He shrugged. "Never regretted it. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things had gone different." Selena was quiet for a moment. "Do you blame her, Sarah?" "No, never." Mason's voice came out harder than he meant it to. "We made that choice together, both of us." "But you gave up more, Sa." "Maybe. Or maybe I just traded one dream for another." He looked at Selena. "Your turn. Tell me something true." She smiled faintly. "I don't know how to be alone with my thoughts. That's why I work all the time. If I stop, if I'm quiet for too long, I start remembering things I'd rather forget." "Like what?" "School? Like the fact that my parents disowned me when I dropped out of business school to start my company. Or that the first investor who believed in me tried to force me out 2 years later when we started making real money. Or that every relationship I've ever had ended because I apparently care more about my work than I do about people. Is that true? Do you?" Selena picked up her wine glass and finally took a sip. "I don't know anymore. Maybe it was true once. Now I think it's just easier to let people believe it than to prove them wrong." "That's a lonely way to live," says the man who spends his days sitting in a tower watching an empty ocean. Mason couldn't argue with that. They sat in silence for a while. Then Selena said, "Lily asked me today if I had any children." "What'd you tell her?" I said no. She asked why not. I didn't have a good answer. You don't need a reason not to have kids. I know. But the way she looked at me, Selena shook her head, like she couldn't imagine why anyone wouldn't want what she has. A family, a father who loves her. She's 7. Her world is small, so maybe, or maybe she understands something I don't. Selena set down her glass. When I was her age, I used to pretend I had a different family. Parents who weren't always fighting, siblings who actually liked me. I'd make up entire stories in my head about birthday parties and beach trips and all these normal things other kids got to do. Your parents were that bad? They weren't bad. They were just absent. Physically there, but not really present. My father was a lawyer who worked 80-hour weeks. My mother was more interested in her charity galas than her children. She paused. I had 2 older brothers. Both of them followed my father into law. When I said I wanted to do something different, it was like I'd committed treason. They still talk to you? No. Last I heard, my father tells people he has 2 sons and no daughters. My mother pretends I don't exist. Selena's voice was flat, matter-of-fact, like she was reading from a report. I haven't spoken to any of them in 8 years. Mason felt something twist in his chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. I stopped caring a long time ago. But the way she said it, too quick, too defensive, made it clear she was lying. Mason leaned back in his chair, watching her. You know what I think? What? I think you care more than you want to admit, and it makes you angry that you still do. Selena's eyes flashed. You've known me for 3 weeks. You don't know anything about what I feel. Maybe not, but I know what loss looks like, and I know what it looks like when someone's still carrying it around. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, then closed it. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. You're right. I hate that you're right, but you are. For what it's worth, caring doesn't make you weak. In my world, it does. Mason didn't have an answer for that, so he just sat with her in the fading light, and that seemed to be enough. The following week, everything changed. It started small. Selena began texting him questions that had nothing to do with work. What kind of music did he like? Had he ever been to Big Sur? Did he think people could actually change? Or were they just stuck being who they'd always been? Mason answered because it felt rude not to, and because part of him liked the idea that Selena was thinking about him when she didn't have to be. Then she started showing up at Pelican Point on his beach days, not to check on him or ask questions about the estate, but just to sit in the sand and watch Lily play. She brought her laptop at first, pretending to work, but eventually she stopped pretending and just sat there, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the ocean. Rick noticed immediately. Your boss is here again, he said one afternoon, jerking his chin toward where Selena sat 50 yards down the beach. She's not my boss. What is she then? Mason didn't have an answer for that. Rick squinted at him. You sleeping with her? What? No. But you thought about it. Jesus. Rick, I'm just saying, man. Be careful. Women like that eat guys like you for breakfast. She's not like that. You sure about that? Mason wasn't sure about anything anymore. That afternoon, after his shift ended, he walked down to where Selena was sitting. She looked up as he approached, shading her eyes against the sun. You don't have to keep coming here, he said. I know. So why do you? Selena was quiet for a moment. Because it's the only place I can think clearly. Everything else in my life is noise. But here, she gestured at the water. Here it's just quiet. Mason sat down beside her. You could get that at your own beach. It's not the same. Your beach has people, families, life. She glanced at him. Mine just has me. You could invite people over. I don't want people. I want... She trailed off, shaking her head. Never mind. What? Nothing. Forget it. But Mason could see it in her face, the loneliness, the longing for something she didn't know how to name. Lily ran over then, her hands full of shells, and the moment passed. But it stayed with Mason for the rest of the day, a question he didn't have the courage to ask. 2 days later, Selena called him at midnight. Mason was half asleep when his phone buzzed. He fumbled for it in the dark, his heart already racing. Midnight calls were never good news. Hello? Mason. Selena's voice was tight, strained. I need your help. He sat up. What's wrong? I'm at the estate. There's someone on the property. Mason's blood went cold. Did you call the police? Security's already here, but She broke off, and he heard something crash in the background. I don't know who to trust. Julian's in Los Angeles. My head of security quit last week after the CFO situation. The guys here now are temps. Where are you? The panic room, second floor. I'm coming. Mason, you don't have to. I'm coming, E. He hung up and was out of bed before he'd fully processed what he was doing. He scribbled a note for his neighbor, an older woman who sometimes watched Lily in emergencies, and taped it to her door with shaking hands. The drive to Selena's estate took 20 minutes. Mason made it in 12. The gate was open when he arrived, which was wrong. The driveway was dark, except for a single security vehicle parked near the front entrance. Mason grabbed the tire iron from his trunk and headed inside. The house was silent. Too silent. Selena? He called. No answer. He found the security guard on the first floor, sitting in the living room with his feet up, scrolling through his phone. The guy barely looked up when Mason walked in. Who are you? I'm with Miss Vaughn. Where is she? Upstairs. She's fine. Then why'd she call me saying someone was on the property? The guard shrugged. False alarm. Probably just an animal. Happens all the time out here. Everything about this felt wrong. Mason's grip tightened on the tire iron. I'm going upstairs. Suit yourself. Mason took the stairs 2 at a time. The second floor was dark except for a thin line of light under one of the doors. He knocked softly. Selena? It's Mason. The door opened immediately. Selena stood there, still fully dressed, her face pale. Behind her, he could see a small room lined with monitors showing security camera feeds. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. What happened? Someone tried to access my servers remotely. They got past the first 2 firewalls before my system locked them out. She gestured to one of the monitors, which showed lines of code Mason didn't understand. They were good, really good. Could it be your CFO, the one you fired? David? Selena shook her head. He's a finance guy. He wouldn't know how to do this. Then who? I don't know, but whoever it was knew exactly where to look. This wasn't some random hacker. This was someone with inside knowledge. Mason thought about the security guard downstairs, the one who'd been way too relaxed for someone supposedly responding to a break-in. Your guard, he said. You trust him? I don't trust anyone right now. Smart, thus. They stood there for a moment, and Mason realized how close they were standing. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. Close enough that he could see the fear in her eyes she was trying so hard to hide. Do you want me to stay? He asked. You don't have to. That's not what I asked. Selena met his eyes. Yes, I want you to stay. So he did. They spent the next 3 hours in that panic room, drinking coffee Selena made in a small kitchenette and watching the security feeds. Around 3 a.m, Selena's tech team called back with an update. They'd traced the hack attempt to an IP address in Singapore, but it was probably routed through a dozen proxies. Whoever was behind it had covered their tracks well. Selena hung up and rubbed her eyes. She looked exhausted. You should sleep, Mason said. I can't. Not until Julian gets here. When's that? He's driving back from LA. Should be here by 6. Mason glanced at his watch. 3 hours. Okay, then I'll stay until he gets here. Selena looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Taking care of me. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I'm going to leave you here alone. Most people would. I'm not most people. She smiled faintly. No, you're really not. They fell into silence again. Then Selena said, Can I tell you something? Sure. I'm scared, all the time, of losing everything I've built, of someone taking it from me, of ending up alone with nothing. She wrapped her arms around herself. And the worst part is, I don't even know if what I've built is worth keeping. Sometimes I look at my company and I can't remember why I wanted it so badly in the first place. Mason didn't know what to say to that, so he said, "When Sarah died, I was angry. Not at her, not at anyone specific, just angry at everything. At the universe for being so random and cruel. At myself for not being able to fix it. I spent a year like that, just furious all the time. What changed?" Lily. One day she asked me why I was always mad, and I didn't have a good answer, and I realized I could either stay angry and lose her too, or I could figure out how to live with the unfairness of it all. He paused. "I'm still figuring it out, but at least I'm trying." Selena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't know how to stop being scared. Maybe you don't have to stop. Maybe you just have to stop letting it run your life." "Is that what you did?" "I'm trying to, Finch." She looked at him, really looked at him, and Mason felt something shift between them, something that had been building for weeks but neither of them had acknowledged. "Mason," she said softly. "Yeah? I'm glad you're here." "Me too." Julian arrived at 6:15, looking like he'd driven through the night without stopping. He took one look at Selena and Mason sitting together in the panic room and raised an eyebrow, but he didn't comment. "I've got it from here," he said. Mason stood, stretching muscles that had gone stiff from sitting. "You good?" he asked Selena. She nodded. "Thank you. For everything. Anytime." He meant it. The hack attempt turned out to be just the beginning. Over the next week, Selena's company was hit with a series of coordinated attacks. A data breach that exposed client information. A smear campaign on social media claiming she'd manipulated stock prices. Anonymous tips to federal regulators about supposed accounting irregularities. It was brutal and methodical, and it was clearly designed to destroy her. Mason watched it unfold from the outside, seeing Selena less and less as she threw herself into damage control. When she did show up at the estate, she looked hollowed out, like she was running on nothing but caffeine and spite. "You need to sleep," he told her one afternoon. "I'll sleep when this is over." "I can't stop, Mason. If I stop, they win." "Who's they?" She laughed bitterly. "I wish I knew." But 3 days later, she found out. Mason was at the beach when she called. He could hear it in her voice immediately, something between rage and devastation. "It's David," she said. "My CFO. He's been working with 2 of my board members. They're trying to force me out." "Can they do that?" "If they get enough votes, yes. They're calling an emergency shareholders meeting next week." Her voice cracked. "They're going to take my company, Mason. Everything I built, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." Mason looked out at the ocean, at the endless roll of waves that didn't care about corporate coups or betrayal or any of the things that destroyed people's lives. "Then fight back," he said. "I don't know how. They've already turned half the board against me. They have leverage I didn't even know existed. So find leverage of your own." It's not that simple. Maybe it is. Maybe you're just too close to see it. Selena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Will you come over? I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'll be there in an hour." He hung up and looked down at Lily, who was building a sandcastle nearby. "We gotta go, kiddo." "But I'm not done." "I know, but someone needs our help." Lily looked up at him with her serious gray eyes. "Is it Miss Selena?" Yes. Is she sad?" "Very sad." Lily stood up and brushed sand off her shorts. "Then we should go. Nobody should be sad alone." Mason's throat tightened. Sometimes his daughter understood the world better than he ever would. They found Selena on the terrace, surrounded by papers and laptops, her hair falling out of its ponytail. She looked up when they arrived, and Mason saw the moment she tried to put on her mask, the controlled, untouchable CEO who had everything under control. But the mask didn't fit anymore. Or maybe she was just too tired to hold it in place. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have called. This isn't your problem." "Too late? We're already here." Mason pulled out a chair and sat down. "So talk to me. What's the situation?" Selena took a shaky breath and laid it all out. David had been planning this for months, ever since she'd started investigating the missing funds. He'd convinced 2 board members, both men who'd never liked reporting to a woman, that Selena was unstable, paranoid, a liability. They'd gathered enough evidence of her erratic behavior to make a case for removing her as CEO. The emergency shareholders meeting was in 5 days. If David's side won, Selena would be out, stripped of her title, her voting rights, everything. What evidence? Mason asked. The CFO firing, the increased security, the fact that I've been working from home more than the office. She laughed bitterly. Apparently delegating and protecting my assets makes me unfit to lead. That's bullshit. That's business. Mason thought about it. What about the hack attempts, the data breach? What about them? Can you prove David was behind them? No, he's too smart to leave a trail. But you suspect him. Of course I do. The timing's too convenient. Mason leaned forward. Then make him prove he wasn't involved. Go public. Tell everyone what's happening. Force him to defend himself instead of playing offense. Selena shook her head. If I go public and I'm wrong, I look paranoid. If I'm right but can't prove it, I look weak. Either way, I lose. But equal odds. Or you force him to make a mistake. She looked at him, something shifting in her expression. You really think that would work? I think cornered animals do stupid things. And I think David's been in control this whole time. Take that away from him and see what happens. Selena was quiet, her mind clearly racing. Then she pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Mason asked. Calling my PR team. If we're going to war, we're doing it right. Not quiet. The press conference was scheduled for the next morning. Selena stood in front of a dozen cameras, her posture straight, her voice steady, and laid out everything. The embezzlement, the forced resignation, the coordinated attacks on her company, the attempted coup. She didn't name David directly. Her lawyers wouldn't let her, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. The internet exploded. By noon, #StandWithSelena was trending. By evening, 3 major news outlets had picked up the story. And David, cornered and exposed, made exactly the mistake Mason had predicted. He called a press conference of his own and denied everything. But he was sweating, stumbling over his words, clearly unprepared for the attention. Someone asked about the shell companies. He said he'd never heard of them. Someone pulled up incorporation documents with his name on them. It fell apart in real time. By the end of the week, David had resigned. The 2 board members who'd supported him followed. The shareholders' meeting was canceled. Selena had won. But when Mason saw her the day after it was over, she didn't look victorious. She looked empty. I thought I'd feel better, she said. They were sitting on her beach, watching Lily chase seagulls. But I just feel tired. You almost lost everything. That takes a toll. But it's more than that. She drew patterns in the sand with her finger. I spent the last 10 years building this company. And in 1 week, I almost lost it because I trusted the wrong person. What does that say about me? It says you're human. I can't afford to be human. Not in my world. Maybe that's the problem. Selena looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, maybe your world is broken. And maybe instead of trying to survive in it, you should think about building a different one. She smiled sadly. That's naive. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only thing that makes sense. They sat in silence for a while. Then Selena said, Lily asked me something yesterday. What? She asked if I was going to be okay. I said yes, and she said good, because Daddy's happier when you're around. Selena glanced at him. Is that true? Mason felt his face heat. She's 7. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That's not an answer. He looked out at the ocean, at the place where his old life had ended, and something new was beginning, whether he was ready for it or not. Yeah, he said quietly. It's true. Selena didn't respond. But when Mason looked at her, he saw tears sliding down her cheeks. Hey, he said, alarmed. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She wiped at her face angrily. I've spent so long building walls that I forgot what it feels like when someone actually sees past them. Mason reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. I see you come, he said. And you're not too much. You're not broken. You're just tired of fighting alone. Selena's fingers tightened around his. I don't know how to do this, whatever this is. Neither do I. Then what do we do? Mason thought about Sarah. about the promise he'd made to himself after she died that he'd never let anyone in again. And he thought about Selena, who'd somehow slipped past every defense he'd built without even trying. "I guess we figure it out together," he said. Selena looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she leaned her head against his shoulder. And Mason, terrified and hopeful in equal measure, let her stay there. They didn't talk about what happened on the beach. Not that day, and not for the week that followed. Mason went back to his routine. Mornings at Pelican Point, afternoons at the estate, and Selena went back to rebuilding her company's reputation. On the surface, nothing had changed, except everything had. Selena started touching him. Small things. Her hand on his arm when she was making a point. Her shoulder brushing his when they sat next to each other. Once, when Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, and they were cleaning up dinner, Selena had reached past him for a plate, and her fingers had grazed his waist. And Mason had felt that touch for hours afterward like a brand. He didn't know what to do with it. Any of it. Rick noticed, of course. Rick noticed everything. "You're sleeping with her," he said one morning, dropping into the lifeguard tower uninvited. "I'm not." "But you want to." Mason didn't answer. "Jesus Christ," Rick muttered. "You got it bad." "I don't have anything." "Sure you don't. That's why you keep checking your phone every 5 minutes like some lovesick teenager." "She's my employer, that's it." "Bu man ni aishmansha." Rick snorted. "Keep telling yourself that, man. But I've seen the way you look at her. And more importantly, I've seen the way she looks at you." "How does she look at me?" "Like you're the only real thing in her life." Mason's throat went tight. He turned away, staring out at the water. "That doesn't mean anything," he said. "Doesn't it?" Before Mason could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Selena. "Can you come by tonight after Lily's asleep? I need to show you something." Mason stared at the message, his pulse kicking up for no good reason. Rick leaned over and read it. "See what I mean?" "Shut up, Rick. I'm just saying, be careful. Women like that don't fit into lives like yours." "I know that." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're forgetting." Mason wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because Rick was right. Somewhere in the last 2 months, he'd started imagining things that had no business existing in his head. Things like Selena at his apartment, drinking coffee at his battered kitchen table. Things like the three of them, him, Lily, Selena, driving down the coast with the windows open and music playing. Things like a future that made no sense but felt possible anyway. He was an idiot. That night, after putting Lily to bed at his neighbor's place, Mason drove to the estate. The gate opened before he could buzz, like Selena had been watching for him. He found her in her office, a room on the second floor he'd only been in once before. It was all windows and steel, with a desk that probably cost more than his car and walls covered in awards and framed magazine covers. Selena stood at the window looking out at the dark ocean. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, and her hair was down. She looked younger like this, less guarded. "Hey," Mason said from the doorway. She turned, and her face lit up in a way that made his chest ache. "You came." "You asked me to." "I know, but I wasn't sure you would." She gestured to a portfolio on her desk. "Come look at this. Bum." Mason crossed the room. The portfolio was full of architectural drawings, detailed plans for some kind of building complex. "What is this?" he asked. "A project I've been working on, quietly." Selena flipped through the pages. "After everything with David, I started thinking about what you said, about building a different world instead of surviving in a broken one." Mason looked at the drawings more closely. The complex was designed around a central courtyard, with multiple buildings surrounding it. Training rooms, classrooms, a pool. "It's a community center," Selena said, "focused on ocean safety and marine education. Free programs for kids who can't afford swim lessons or water sports equipment. Job training for people who want to work in marine conservation. All of it funded by my company." Mason's breath caught. "Selena, I bought the land already. 6 acres down in Marina Vista, right on the waterfront. The area's been struggling since the fishing industry collapsed. This could help." "This is incredible." "It was your idea. The things you said about wanting to teach kids about the ocean, about giving them skills that could save their lives, I couldn't stop thinking about it." She looked at him. "I want you to run it." Mason stared at her. What? It's the center. I want you to design the programs, hire the staff, make it everything you dreamed about when you were a kid reading those library books. Selena, I can't. Why not? Because I'm a lifeguard. I don't know how to run something like this. Bull. You know more than you think, and what you don't know, you'll learn. She stepped closer. Mason, you saved my life, not just that day in the ocean, but every day since. You made me remember that there's more to life than building empires and crushing competitors. This is my way of saying thank you. You don't have to thank me. I want to. And more than that, I want to do something that matters. Something that isn't about profit margins or market share. Her voice dropped. I want to build something with you. Her voice. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning that had nothing to do with community centers. Mason's heart was hammering. Selena, I know what you're going to say. That this is crazy. That we barely know each other. That I'm your employer, and this crosses about 50 different lines. She took another step closer. But I don't care. For the first time in 10 years, I don't care about doing the smart thing or the strategic thing. I just want... She broke off, her eyes searching his face. What? Mason asked quietly. What do you want? You. I want you, Pot. The confession hit him like a wave. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there while his entire world rearranged itself. Then Selena's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. You're still grieving Sarah, and I'm your employer, and this is completely inappropriate. Mason kissed her. He didn't plan it, didn't think about it, just closed the distance between them and pressed his mouth to hers, cutting off the torrent of words. Selena froze for half a second, then made a sound low in her throat and kissed him back. It wasn't smooth or practiced. It was messy and desperate, both of them trying to say things they didn't have words for. Selena's hands fisted in his shirt. Mason's fingers tangled in her hair. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Mason, Selena whispered, I know this is insane. We can't. I know that too. But neither of them moved away. Selena pressed her forehead against his. I don't know how to do this. I've never been good at relationships. I always screw them up. I haven't been with anyone since Sarah died. I don't even remember how to be with someone. So we're both disasters. Basically, she laughed, and it sounded almost like crying. What are we doing? I have no idea. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped around each other in a room full of expensive furniture and architectural drawings for a future neither of them had planned. Then Selena pulled back just enough to look at him. Stay tonight, she said. Mason's stomach dropped. Selena, not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone. He should say no. He should go home, put distance between them, remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, he said, okay. They ended up on the terrace, wrapped in blankets against the October chill, drinking wine and talking about nothing important. Selena told him about her first apartment in San Francisco, a studio so small she could touch both walls while lying in bed. Mason told her about the time Lily had tried to rescue a beached jellyfish and gotten stung in 12 places. She cried for 2 hours, he said, but the next week she asked if we could go back to that beach and check if the jellyfish was okay. Selena smiled. She has your heart. Yeah, it terrifies me. Why? Because hearts are fragile, and the world breaks them. Selena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my world broke mine a long time ago. I thought I'd never want to risk it again. But then you showed up, and now I can't stop thinking about taking that risk. Mason looked at her. What if we both get hurt? Then at least we won't be hurt alone. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in 3 years. Around 2 a.m, Selena fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. Mason sat there, listening to her breathe, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this terrified and this hopeful at the same time. When dawn started breaking over the ocean, he carefully extracted himself and drove home. Lily was still asleep at the neighbors. Mason picked her up, carried her back to their apartment, and put her in bed without waking her. Then he sat on the couch and put his head in his hands. What are you doing? He muttered to himself. But he already knew the answer. He was falling for someone he had no business falling for. Someone whose world was so far removed from his that they might as well live on different planets. And the worst part was, he didn't want to stop. Over the next 3 weeks, they fell into a pattern that felt both inevitable and impossible. Mason would work his shifts, take care of Lily, maintain the careful routine that had kept him functional for 3 years. Then, after Lily was asleep, he'd drive to the estate and spend hours with Selena. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they kissed until they were both shaking, then pulled apart before things could go further than either of them was ready for. It was torture. It was the best thing that had happened to Mason since Sarah died. Selena was different with him than she was with anyone else. She laughed more, swore less, let her guard down in ways that made it clear she'd been performing for everyone else her entire life. "I fired 3 people today," she told him one night. They were in her office, Selena at her desk, Mason sprawled on the couch with architectural plans for the community center. Why? Because they were incompetent. They'd been hiding their incompetence for months, but I finally had proof. She glanced at him. "Does that bother you? That I fire people? Did they deserve it?" "Yes." "Then no." She smiled. "Most people tell me I'm too harsh, that I should give people second chances. Most people don't run billion-dollar companies. You don't care that I can be ruthless?" Mason thought about it. "I think you do what you have to do to survive, and I think the people who call you ruthless are usually the ones trying to take advantage of you." Something shifted in Selena's expression. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just say what I'm thinking. That's the same thing." Mason shook his head. "No, it's not. The right thing would be calculated, strategic. I'm just honest. I know, that's what makes it right." Mason. She came around the desk and sat beside him on the couch, close enough that their thighs touched. Mason's pulse kicked up the way it always did when she was near. "I want to show you something," Selena said. She pulled out her phone and opened a folder full of photos. The first one was a rendering of the completed community center, the buildings gleaming white against a blue sky. "We broke ground last week," she said quietly. "I wanted to surprise you." Mason stared at the image. "You're serious about this?" "Of course I'm serious. I told you I wanted to build something that mattered." She scrolled to the next photo, a construction crew working on the foundation. "They're saying 8 months to completion, maybe less if the weather holds." "Selena, this is going to cost millions." "I have millions. What's the point of having them if I don't use them for something good?" Bokram. Mason didn't know what to say. He looked at the renderings, at the future taking shape in pixels and concrete, and felt something crack open in his chest. "Thank you," he said roughly. "Don't thank me yet. You still have to design all the programs, hire the staff, figure out how to make this thing actually work." "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you do. You've been doing it in your head for years." She turned to look at him. "Mason, I've watched you with Lily, with the tourists on the beach. You have a gift for teaching people about the ocean. This is just doing it on a bigger scale. What if I fail?" "Then you fail, and we figure out what went wrong and try again." She took his hand. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to try." Ikasikim. Mason looked down at their intertwined fingers. "Why does this matter so much to you?" "Because you matter to me, and this is your dream, even if you won't admit it." She was right. Of course she was right. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." Selena's smile could have lit up the whole coastline. 2 nights later, everything fell apart. Mason was at the beach, finishing up his evening shift when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Carter?" A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Yeah?" "This is Amanda Reeves. I'm a reporter with the Tribune. I'm working on a story about Selena Vaughn, and I was hoping you could answer some questions." Mason's stomach dropped. "I don't have anything to say. Are you aware that Miss Vaughn is currently under investigation by the SEC for potential securities fraud?" "What?" "The investigation is related to allegations that she manipulated company finances to inflate stock prices before a major acquisition. I was wondering if you could comment on your relationship with her during this time." I don't have a relationship with her. I work for her. Really? Because I have photos of you and Miss Vaughn together at her estate. Multiple occasions, often late at night. And sources close to the situation say you're much more than an employee. Bokish. Mason's hand tightened on the phone. Who are your sources? I can't reveal that, but they're credible. And they're concerned that Miss Vaughn is using her relationship with you to rehabilitate her image after the attempted coup by her former CFO. That's bullshit. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a billionaire CEO befriended a working-class single father right when she needed good publicity. And now she's funding a charitable project that makes her look generous and civic-minded right when federal regulators are investigating her company. Mason felt sick. You don't know what you're talking about. Then help me understand. Tell me your side. My side is that you're a vulture looking for a story that doesn't exist. He hung up. His hands were shaking. An SEC investigation. Photos of him and Selena. Sources claiming she was using him. It couldn't be true. Could it? No. He knew Selena. She wouldn't, but then he thought about how quickly she'd offered him the job after the rescue, how she'd pushed for the community center right after the corporate coup, how every major decision she'd made seemed perfectly timed for maximum public impact. Stop it, he told himself. You're letting a reporter get in your head, but the doubt had already taken root. He called Selena. She didn't answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Mason grabbed Lily from where she was playing near the tower and drove straight to the estate. The gate was closed. He buzzed the intercom. Mr. Carter? Julian's voice, clipped and professional. I need to see Selena. Miss Vaughn is in a meeting. I don't care, it's important. There was a pause. Then the gate opened. Mason found Selena in her office, surrounded by lawyers. She looked up when he walked in, and he saw the exhaustion in her face before she hit it. Mason, what are you doing here? A reporter just called me. Amanda Reeves from the Tribune. She said you're under investigation by the SEC. The room went silent. One of the lawyers, a man in his 50s with silver hair, stood up. Mr. Carter, this is a private meeting. You need to leave. Mason ignored him, his eyes locked on Selena. Is it true? Selena's jaw tightened. Yes. The word hit like a fist to the gut. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not real. It's another attack by David's allies, trying to discredit me before the board makes their final decision on his severance package. The reporter had photos of us. She said sources are claiming you're using me for good publicity. Something flickered across Selena's face. Hurt. Anger. Mason couldn't tell which. And you believed her? I don't know what to believe. You could believe me. I'm trying to, but you didn't tell me about the investigation. What else haven't you told me? The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Carter, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, now. Selena held up a hand. It's fine, Robert. Give us a minute. The lawyers filed out, shooting Mason dark looks. When the door closed, Selena walked to the window, her back to him. I didn't tell you about the SEC because it wasn't your problem, she said quietly. I didn't want to drag you into my mess. I'm already in your mess. Don't you get that? I know, and I'm sorry, but I can't protect you from everything. My world is ugly, Mason. It's full of people who will twist anything good into something suspicious. I thought I could keep you separate from it, but I was wrong. Is that what I am to you? Someone you're trying to protect? Or someone you're using? Selena spun around, her eyes blazing. How dare you? After everything, just answer the question. The community center is real. My feelings for you are real. All of it is real. But the timing is terrible. I know that, but I can't help when things happen. David's betrayal, the SEC investigation, meeting you, none of it was planned. I'm just trying to survive it all without losing my mind. Mason wanted to believe her, but the reporter's words kept echoing in his head. Photos, sources, manipulation. I need to go, he said. Selena's face went pale. Mason, I just need time to think. About what? About whether I'm lying to you? About whether this is worth it, any of this. The words came out harsher than he meant them to, and he saw them land like blows. Selena flinched, then straightened, pulling her armor back into place. "Fine," she said coldly. "Take all the time you need." Mason turned and walked out. He made it to his car before the guilt hit him. He just accused Selena of using him, of manipulating him, based on nothing but a phone call from a stranger. What the hell was wrong with him? But he didn't go back. Instead, he drove home, put Lily to bed, and sat on his couch in the dark, trying to untangle the mess in his head. His phone buzzed. A text from Selena. "I'm not using you. I would never do that. But if you can't trust me, then maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't worth it." Mason stared at the message for a long time. Then he turned off his phone and tried to sleep. He didn't hear from Selena for 3 days. On the 4th day, Julian showed up at the beach. "Miss Vaughn wanted me to give you this," he said, handing Mason an envelope. Inside was a check for 3 months' salary and a brief note. "Thank you for your work. Your position has been terminated. The community center project will continue without your involvement. I wish you and Lily all the best." Mason read it twice, his heart sinking. "She fired me," he said. Julian's expression gave nothing away. "She's giving you what you asked for. Distance." I didn't ask for this. Didn't you?" Mason opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Julian was right. He'd questioned Selena's motives, accused her of manipulation, told her he didn't know if any of this was worth it. What else was she supposed to do? "I screwed up," Mason said quietly. "Yes, you did." Julian turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I've worked for Miss Vaughn for 7 years. I've seen her build her company from nothing, survive betrayals that would have destroyed most people, and make decisions that required more strength than anyone should have to have. And in all that time, I've never seen her as happy as she was these last 2 months. Julian, she's not using you, Mr. Carter. She's falling in love with you. The fact that you couldn't see that says more about you than it does about her." He walked away, leaving Mason standing on the beach with a check he didn't want and a truth he'd been too afraid to face. That night, after Lily was asleep, Mason pulled out his phone. He had 17 missed calls from Selena, all from that first night. After that, nothing. He'd broken something, and he didn't know if he could fix it, but he had to try. Mason drove to the estate. The gate didn't open when he buzzed. "Julian, please, I need to talk to her. Miss Vaughn doesn't want to see you." "I know, but I need to apologize." "Then send her a message. Leave her alone, Mr. Carter." The intercom cut off. Mason sat in his car outside the gate for an hour, hoping Selena would change her mind. She didn't. He went back the next night, and the night after that. Each time Julian turned him away. On the 4th night, the gate opened. But it wasn't Julian's voice on the intercom. "Mason?" Selena sounded tired, defeated. "You need to stop coming here." "Not until you let me apologize." I don't want your apology." "Then what do you want?" She was quiet for so long he thought she'd hung up. Then she said, "I want you to trust me, but you can't. And I can't build something with someone who's always going to question my motives." "You're right. I should have trusted you. I should have told that reporter to go to hell and come straight to you. Instead, I let my fear make me stupid." "Why? Why what? Why were you afraid? What did you think I was going to do to you?" Mason swallowed hard. "I thought you were going to leave." "Everyone leaves, Selena. My parents, Sarah, everyone I've ever cared about. I thought if I found a reason to push you away first, it would hurt less when you left on your own." "Boss, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "I know. I wasn't going to leave, Mason. I was falling in love with you." The past tense felt like a knife. "And now?" he asked. Selena's laugh was bitter. "Now I don't know. How do I fall in love with someone who doesn't believe I'm capable of loving them?" Mason didn't have an answer for that. "Go home, Mason," Selena said softly. "Take care of your daughter. Forget about me." "I can't." "You have to." The intercom went silent. Mason sat there for another hour, but the gate didn't open again. Mason spent the next week in a fog. He showed up at the beach, climbed into his tower, and stared at the water without really seeing it. At night, He made dinner for Lily and listened to her talk about school with half his brain, while the other half replayed every conversation he'd had with Selena, looking for the moment he'd ruined everything. Lily noticed, of course. Kids always noticed. "Are you sad about Miss Selena?" she asked one night while they were eating mac and cheese from a box. Mason looked up from his untouched plate. "What makes you think that?" "Because you look how you looked after Mommy died. Like you're here, but not really here." The observation hit him like a punch. He set down his fork. "I messed up, kiddo. I said something I shouldn't have, and now Miss Selena doesn't want to talk to me anymore." "But did you say you're sorry?" "I tried. She won't let me." Lily frowned, thinking hard. "When I make Jessie mad at school, I have to do more than just say sorry. I have to show her I mean it." "How do you do that?" "I draw her a picture, or I share my snacks, or I help her with the hard math problems." She pushed her macaroni around her plate. "Maybe you need to show Miss Selena you're sorry, not just say it." Mason stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. "You're right," he said quietly. "I know. I'm always right." Despite everything, Mason smiled. The problem was, he didn't know how to show Selena anything when she wouldn't see him. He couldn't send flowers or write letters or do any of the normal things people did when they screwed up a relationship, because their relationship had never been normal to begin with. And then, on a gray Tuesday morning, Rick showed up at his tower with news that changed everything. "You hear about the storm?" Rick asked, climbing up without being invited. "What storm?" "Us. Big one. Category 3 hurricane off Baja, headed north. They're saying it might hit the coast this weekend." Mason's stomach dropped. "Here?" "Maybe. Forecasters aren't sure yet. Could veer west. Could slam straight into us. Either way, we're looking at massive swells, flooding, the whole deal." Rick squinted at the horizon. "They're going to close the beaches tomorrow. Issue evacuation warnings for the coastal properties. Coastal properties. Like Selena's estate, perched on a cliff with half a mile of unstable beach below it." Mason was already pulling out his phone. "Don't bother," Rick said. "She won't answer." "I have to try," he called. It went straight to voicemail. He texted. No response. By Wednesday afternoon, the storm warnings were everywhere. Mason drove to the estate, but the gate was locked and no one answered the intercom. He could see Selena's car in the driveway, which meant she was there, which meant she was ignoring him. He went home and spent the night watching weather reports while Lily slept. The hurricane had strengthened to a Category 4. It was moving faster than predicted. The projected path put it directly over their section of coast. Evacuation orders came through at midnight. Mason packed a bag for himself and Lily, threw it in his car, and drove them to his sister's place 40 miles inland. She met them at the door in her bathrobe, her face creased with sleep and worry. "You're staying here until this is over," she said. Not a question. "I will, but I need to do something first." "Mason, watch Lily for me. Please, I'll be back before the storm hits." "Yes." His sister looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You're going after her, aren't you? That woman from the news." "Her name is Selena." "I know her name. I also know she's trouble." "She's not trouble. She's just alone. And her house is right on the cliff. She has people. Security, staff, whatever. She doesn't need you." But Mason was already heading back to his car. "I'll be back in a few hours." "Mason!" He drove. The roads were chaos. Everyone was evacuating, cars packed with belongings, people shouting into cell phones. It took him 2 hours to get back to the coast. By the time he reached Selena's estate, the wind was already picking up, whipping palm trees back and forth like they were made of paper. The gate was still locked. Mason buzzed the intercom over and over until finally, Julian answered. "Mr. Carter, you need to leave. The evacuation order. Is Selena still there?" A pause. "Yes. Let me in. I can't do that." "Julian, there's a Category 4 hurricane about to make landfall. That house is right on the edge of a cliff. If the storm surge is bad enough, I'm aware of the danger. Miss Vaughn has been informed. She's choosing to stay." Mason's blood went cold. "What do you mean, choosing to stay?" "She won't leave. I've tried to convince her, but she won't listen." "Put her on." "She won't talk to you." "I don't care. Put her on, say. Another pause, then Selena's voice, cold and distant. What do you want, Mason? I want you to evacuate. The storm. I know about the storm. I'm staying. That's insane. It's my house, my choice. Selena, please, this isn't about us. This is about your safety. I'm perfectly safe. The house is reinforced. I have supplies. I'll be fine. You don't know that. Neither do you, Mason wanted to scream. Instead, he took a breath and tried a different approach. Why are you really staying? Is this about me? Because if it is, don't flatter yourself. Not everything is about you. The words stung, but Mason pushed through. Then what is it about? Selena was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the wind. I'm tired, Mason. Tired of running. Tired of building walls and protecting myself and doing everything right just to survive. For once in my life, I want to stop fighting, even if it's dangerous. That's not stopping. That's giving up. Maybe I want to give up. Mason's heart clenched. No, you don't. I know you don't. You don't know anything about what I want. You proved that. You're right, I don't. But I know you're not a quitter. You're the woman who built a company from nothing, who survived betrayal and attacks and everything else people threw at you. You don't give up when things get hard. This isn't hard, Mason. This is impossible. You and me. All of it. It's not impossible. It's just scary. And I'm sorry I made it worse. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I let my fear make me hurt you. His voice cracked. But please don't do this. Don't stay in that house just to prove a point. I'm not proving a point. I'm just done. Selena. The intercom cut off. Mason stood at the gate, rain starting to fall, and made a decision he knew was probably stupid but couldn't stop himself from making. He climbed the fence. It took him 3 tries, and he tore his shirt and scraped his hands bloody, but he got over. He ran through the garden toward the house just as the rain turned from drizzle to downpour. The front door was locked. He pounded on it with both fists. Selena, open the door. Nothing. He ran around to the back, to the terrace. Through the glass, he could see her standing in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. Mason grabbed a chair and smashed it through the glass door. The alarm went off immediately, shrieking into the wind. Selena spun around, her eyes wide with shock. What the hell are you doing? She shouted over the noise. Saving you again! Mason stepped through the broken glass, breathing hard. You're coming with me. I told you, I'm staying. No, you're not. You can't make me leave. Watch me, shit. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her wrist. Selena tried to pull away, but he held on. Let go of me. Not until you're safe. I don't want to be safe. I want... Her voice broke. I just want it to stop hurting. Mason's anger drained away. He loosened his grip but didn't let go. I know, he said quietly. I know it hurts. But running away or staying here to prove some point about not caring, that's not going to fix it. Then what will? I don't know. But it starts with getting out of this house before the storm tears it apart. Selena looked around the room, at the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, all the things she'd accumulated to prove she'd made it. Then she looked back at Mason. Why did you come back? She asked. After I told you to leave me alone, why did you come back? Because I love you, and I'm done being afraid of that. The words hung in the air between them while the alarm screamed and the rain hammered against the windows. Selena's eyes filled with tears. You hurt me. I know. You made me feel like everything I gave you was just manipulation. I know, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. Mason stepped closer. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving without you. The hurricane, I don't care about the hurricane. I care about you. Selena stared at him, her walls cracking, crumbling, falling away piece by piece. Then she was in his arms, sobbing against his chest while he held her, like she was the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. I love you too, she whispered. I'm so angry at you, but I love you too. I know. We'll figure out the angry part later. Right now, we need to go. They made it to Mason's car just as the wind hit full force. The drive inland was terrifying, branches flying across the road, power lines down, rain so heavy the wipers couldn't keep up. But Mason kept driving, one hand on the wheel, the other holding Selena's like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. They reached his sister's house 2 hours later, soaked and exhausted. His sister took one look at them and pointed to the bathroom. Hot showers. Both of you. Then we'll talk. Lily ran out from the living room and launched herself at Mason. You came back! Of course I did. I promised. Lily looked at Selena, who was dripping water all over the floor and looked like she'd been through a war. Hi, Miss Selena. Are you okay? Selena knelt down, bringing herself to Lily's eye level. I am now, thanks to your dad. He's good at saving people. Yes, he is. The storm made landfall that night. They watched it on the news, clustered in Mason's sister's living room while the wind howled outside. The hurricane tore through the coast with brutal efficiency, flooding streets, toppling trees, tearing roofs off buildings. Around midnight, Julian called. His voice was tight. Miss Vaughn, you need to see this. He sent a video. Mason and Selena watched it together on her phone, and Mason felt his stomach drop. The cliff below Selena's estate had collapsed. Half of it had slid into the ocean, taking the stairs and part of the terrace with it. The house still stood, but it was teetering on the edge of what was left. Windows shattered, one wall completely gone. If Selena had stayed, she would have died. Selena watched the video 3 times without saying anything. Then she handed the phone back to Mason and walked outside onto the covered porch. Mason followed her. I almost died, she said, staring at the rain. Yeah, because I was being stubborn and stupid and self-destructive. Yeah. You saved my life, again. Mason moved to stand beside her. You would have done the same for me. Would I? Yes. Because underneath all the walls and the armor and the fear, you're good, Selena. You care about people even when you pretend not to. You just forgot how to show it. Selena leaned against the porch railing. I don't know how to do this. Be with someone who actually sees me. It's terrifying. It is. But it's also the only thing that makes sense. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, we're a disaster. You don't trust me. I push you away. We barely know how to communicate without hurting each other. So we learn, together. What if we can't? Mason thought about Sarah, about the years they'd spent building something real before cancer took her away, about all the fights and makeups and compromises that went into loving another person. Then we fail, he said. And it'll hurt, but at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. Selena turned to look at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being alone. Me too. She kissed him then, soft and slow, and it felt different from all the other times, less desperate, more certain. When they pulled apart, Selena said, I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to work too much and forget to eat, and probably make 100 decisions you disagree with. I'm going to be overprotective. I'm going to worry about Lily constantly and probably drive you crazy with how boring my life is compared to yours. Boring sounds nice right now. Yeah. They stood there on the porch, watching the storm rage, and for the first time in weeks, Mason felt like he could breathe. The hurricane passed by morning, leaving destruction in its wake. The cleanup took months. Selena's estate was condemned, the remaining structure too unstable to save. She ended up moving into a smaller house inland, closer to Marina Vista, closer to the community center that was still under construction. The SEC investigation ended with no charges filed. The reporter who'd called Mason published her story anyway, but it got buried under bigger news, and no one cared. David and his allies disappeared into corporate obscurity, and Mason and Selena figured out how to build something together. It wasn't smooth. They fought about schedules and priorities and the fact that Selena kept trying to throw money at problems that required time instead. Mason struggled with letting her into Lily's life, terrified of what would happen if things didn't work out. Selena struggled with being vulnerable, with showing weakness, with trusting that Mason wouldn't leave when things got hard. But they kept trying. 6 months after the hurricane, the community center opened. It was smaller than the original plans, adjusted after the storm, but it was beautiful. 3 buildings around a central courtyard, all of them designed to withstand whatever the ocean threw at them. Training pools, classrooms, equipment storage, offices. Mason stood in the main building on opening day, looking at the kids already splashing in the pool, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Selena had insisted on hiring local instructors, people from Marina Vista who knew the water and understood the community. Mason oversaw the programs, designing curricula that taught water safety alongside marine biology, confidence alongside swimming strokes. It was everything he dreamed about in those library books when he was a kid. Everything he thought he'd given up when Sarah got pregnant and his life took a different path. Except this was better, because he hadn't given anything up. He'd just found a different way forward. Selena found him standing there and slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How strange life is. How one random day in the ocean can change everything." "You mean when you saved me?"
"Yes, Selena smiled. "I used to think about that too. How random it was that I slipped on that railing. How different everything would be if I hadn't. Regrets? Not even one."
They watched the kids in the pool for a while. Then Lily ran over, her hair wet, her face glowing.
"Dad, did you see me dive? Miss Selena, did you see?"
"I saw," Selena said. "You were amazing. I'm going to be a marine biologist when I grow up, just like Dad wanted to be." Mason's throat tightened. "You can be anything you want, kiddo." "I know, but I want to be that." Lily grinned and ran back to the pool. Selena squeezed his hand. "She's wonderful." "Yeah, she is." "You did good, Mason." "We did good. All three of us." The center's grand opening ceremony was scheduled for sunset. Mason had tried to keep it small, but Selena had invited press and donors and half the town. By 6 o'clock, the courtyard was packed with people. Mason stood at the front, feeling completely out of his depth. He'd never been good at public speaking, but when Selena nodded at him from the crowd, he took a breath and began. "I'm not good at speeches," he said, and several people laughed. "So I'll keep this short. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, and I thought that was the end of everything good in my life. I thought I'd spend the rest of my days just surviving, just getting through one day at a time for my daughter's sake." He glanced at Lily, who was sitting in the front row, grinning at him. "Then I met someone who reminded me that life doesn't end just because it changes. That loss doesn't mean you stop building. That being broken doesn't mean you can't heal." He looked at Selena now and saw tears in her eyes. "This center exists because Selena Vaughn believed in a dream I'd given up on. Because she saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. And because she taught me that the best way to honor the people we've lost is to keep living, to keep trying, to keep opening ourselves up to possibility even when it's terrifying." "Yes, betas sar ete." Mason's voice roughened. Sarah would have loved this place. She would have loved seeing kids learn to swim, learn to respect the ocean, learn that they're stronger than they think. And I think she would have loved Selena too, because Selena gave me permission to start living again. He paused, then said something he'd been thinking about for weeks. "I used to think love was about finding someone perfect, someone who fit into your life without changing anything. But that's not love. That's comfort. Real love is about finding someone who challenges you, who makes you better, who stands beside you when everything falls apart, and says, 'We'll figure it out together.'" He walked down from the small stage and stopped in front of Selena. Her hands were shaking. "You're not perfect," he said. "You work too much. You're stubborn. You think you can solve everything with money and strategy. Mason, but you're also brave and brilliant and more capable of love than you give yourself credit for. You saved me just as much as I saved you, and I don't want to spend another day without you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. The crowd went silent. "Selena Vaughn, will you marry me? Will you build a family with me and Lily? Will you let us show you that you deserve to be loved exactly as you are?" Selena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You're insane." "Probably. We've only been together 6 months. I know. People are going to say I'm too rich for you, that we're too different, that it'll never work." "Let them." Selena laughed through her tears. "You're supposed to be the practical one." "I'm tired of being practical. I want to be happy, and you make me happy. Even when I'm difficult?" "Especially when you're difficult." Selena looked at Lily, who was bouncing in her seat with excitement. Then she looked back at Mason. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted. Mason stood and pulled Selena into his arms, kissing her while people cheered and cameras flashed, and Lily ran over to hug them both. When they finally broke apart, Selena looked at the ring he'd slipped onto her finger, a simple silver band shaped like a wave. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's us," Mason said. "Imperfect and unexpected and absolutely right." They stayed at the center until after dark, celebrating with the community, watching families explore the facilities, seeing the future they'd built together taking shape. And when they finally left, walking to the car with Lily between them, Mason felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. They'd still fight about schedules and priorities. Selena would still struggle with trusting. Mason would still worry about losing the people he loved. Life would still be messy and complicated and hard, but they wouldn't face it alone. 3 months later, they got married on the beach at sunset. Not the public beach. Selena's old property was still closed off by caution tape, but a small stretch of sand near the community center, with just family and close friends. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a white dress she'd picked out herself and carrying a basket of shells instead of petals. Rick stood up as Mason's best man, wearing a suit for the first time in probably a decade. Julian gave Selena away, and when he placed her hand in Mason's, there were tears in his eyes. The ceremony was short, the vows were simple. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Mason pulled Selena close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. And later, when the sun had set and the guests had gone home, the three of them walked barefoot along the shoreline. Lily ran ahead, chasing waves, while Mason and Selena followed hand in hand. "Are you happy?" Selena asked. Mason looked at his daughter, his wife, the vast Pacific stretching out before them, and knew the answer was complicated. Because happiness wasn't a destination. It was moments like this, strung together like pearls on a string. It was choosing to keep trying even when you were terrified. It was building something with someone who saw your scars and loved you anyway. "Yeah," he said. "I am." Selena leaned her head against his shoulder. "Me too." They stood there for a long time, three people who'd all survived different storms and found each other on the other side. Three people who'd learned that love wasn't about being whole on your own. It was about letting someone else see your broken pieces and trusting they wouldn't cut themselves on the edges. The ocean rolled in, pulled back, indifferent and eternal. And Mason, for the first time since Sarah died, felt ready for whatever came next. Because life, he'd learned, wasn't about avoiding pain or protecting yourself from loss. It was about showing up, trying, choosing to love even when it scared you, choosing to build even when you might fail, choosing to believe that tomorrow could be better than yesterday, even when all the evidence suggested otherwise. It was about standing in the middle of a storm and deciding to hold on instead of letting go. And as Lily ran back to them, grabbing their hands and pulling them toward the water with a laugh that sounded like hope itself, Mason knew they'd made the right choice. All of them, together.